Hi, my name is Bob Taylor, and I'm your host for this segment of Our Ventura TV. I'm here today with my guest, Greg Gardner, and our subject today, breakthrough thinking. Greg, thank you very much for being here.
My pleasure.
Now, breakthrough thinking, kind of a big subject. What qualifies you to discuss and be knowledgeable about breakthrough thinking?
Well, Bob, I've got many years of experience working with a telecommunications company and several different clubs, organizations, project management institutes, et cetera, et cetera. I've got a lot under my belt.
Okay, now for the telecommunication, what kind of things did you do in your job to gain some of that experience?
Well, basically, I brought both union and management employees together to problem solve from a creative perspective. Taught them 5 days worth of breakthrough thinking.
Okay. Now, to me, back 20 years ago, I say my generation, which is actually your generation, but the big things were thinking out of the box. What's the difference between thinking out of the box and breakthrough thinking?
Thinking out of the box is a rich distinction that incorporates breakthrough thinking. There's several components, what I call distinctions, that help a person or persons or businesses, clubs, organizations get out of their box and do something different and create their internal or external breakthroughs.
Okay, we both use the term box. I understand the term. Quick description on what somebody's box is.
Well, a box can be somebody's vicious circle. For example, habits. We have a tendency to be all made up of habits and individual perceptions and personal realities, etc. And what we tend to do is the same thing over and over again, but expecting different results.
Of course, right.
And you know the old saying, doing the same thing over and over again is the definition of what?
Stupidity.
Well, I'd like to call it insanity.
Insanity, okay, it's the same thing.
Stupidity, insanity.
Unless you change where you're doing something or the person you're doing it with, you're going to end up with the same results every time.
So true. And we tend to do that right now more than ever, what I observe.
Right. Okay, so how do you, I can have a discussion with somebody and agree with them about their policy or their thoughts of something and say, okay, I'm thinking out of the box because I'm going to agree with them. But that doesn't mean I'm really thinking out of the box. I'm just agreeing with somebody. I'm still in my little box.
True.
How do I stay in a breakthrough thinking mode, or how do we get to where we can always do breakthrough thinking without having to go through challenges and stuff just to try to get there?
Great question. A lot of breakthrough thinking centers around you and me, our individual habits and our self-reflection. I've got this great buzzword called metacognition. It's all about thinking about our thoughts and how we are and how we're being. And what we have a tendency to do is go on autopilot. And we expect all these different results with our autopilot. And the reality, it requires a lot of self-reflection, listening to our listening, active listening instead of lazy listening.
I like that, listening to our listening.
Listening to our listening, yeah. And then choosing the words that we speak. I mean, in today's world, a lot of people don't think about the words they use. And they can be very, very tough on others, and it doesn't create breakthroughs.
Right. Most communication challenges we have are not because people disagree on something, but it's the words they use to discuss things with somebody as opposed to, let's put together this and see how we can make it work.
Yeah, although there is a lot of disagreement there, and a lot of that disagreement stems from our own growing up and our own trials and tribulations we've had in our life.
Right.
In fact, there's a term called breakdowns equal breakthroughs.
Okay.
A lot of times in order to create a breakthrough, you got to go through a breakdown.
Yes.
And go through some pain to get to the gain, as the old saying goes.
Well, you can't know what you've never been through, or you can't understand what you've never done.
True, and that brings you to another distinction of my training, and that's, or just sharing what breakthrough thinking is all about, is what I call the knowledge pie of what we know and then what we don't know. And there's a vast amount of universe out there. What we don't know, we don't know. And that's where the domain of breakthroughs lie. That's where you can go and create.
Well, as I mature, as opposed to saying getting older, I find that what used to be in my memory forever is now years, and what used to be years is now weeks.
Oh, I'm sorry, but I'm kind of in the same boat.
Okay, so how do we as older people or the mature generation, how do we continue that without getting back into our own little box? I mean, because we tend to just, we can get out. I can open my lid and I can climb out, but it's hard for me to stay out there.
Yeah, well, a lot of it takes some disciplines that create, ultimately, I think everybody steps out of their box at some point in their life and creates their own intentional or non-intentional breakthrough. But the reality of it is you end up boxing yourself back in. That's human nature.
Right.
We have a tendency to get out of one box and do another box. So how do you do that? You do that through self-reflection, accountability, commitment.
Accountability.
Yes.
Now, do you find your breakthrough thinking, you're working with a bunch of other people? So accountability can be either with yourself or it can be with other people, which is a lot stronger than trying to do it on your own. Because my accountability is all in my box.
Yes. If you're just,
I need accountability out of my box.
yes, you do. Yes, you do. Otherwise, what happens?
You're back in your box.
Yeah, and you're back into your vicious circle of doing one thing over and over and over again.
Okay. Now, years ago, my wife and I took Spanish lessons because we wanted to expand our box. And we did really well. It was just like a 6-month course or something, you know, at the Learning Tree. And we do our little 6-month thing. And we're really good for a couple weeks. We're using Spanish words in front of my son and everything, and he's having fun with it. Well, a couple years later, we're saying, well, I just don't remember any of this, so we went and did it again. And we were able to go to a restaurant and order things in Spanish, but all of a sudden, 6 months later after that, you're going, what were those words again? Because we weren't using it. So I looked at expanding our box, but not being used regularly, my box shrank again.
Oh, exactly.
And we're right back to where it was. So how do you stay out of that with the new things that you think unless you're using it on a regular basis?
Well, and that's the one thing you have to be aware of is how you're using it, when you're using it, where you're using it, and if you're using it. If you want to quit smoking, for example, that's a perfect example of creating a breakthrough. And the breakthrough is, the gap is what is versus what should be. And there's elements of problem solving within this whole entire process too, which gets into some time to share some of that with you, but root cause, et cetera. But the accountability thing, if you can't hold yourself accountable for not smoking, for example, then ask your friends around you to help hold you accountable. Build things into your life process that will make you more accountable for doing what you want to do in life.
But you took that to real simple terms when you talk about the smoking or trying to change any habit. I guess you have to go some kind of breakthrough thinking to change any kind of habit you're in on a regular basis.
Exactly. And guess what? We're all habitual creatures in nature. Everything you've done all your life goes into your neurons and cellular structure of your brain, your synapses, et cetera, et cetera. And we're walking creatures of habit. And so we have to break some of those habits. How do you break those habits? Is you become aware of those habits, and then you got to do something different. It can be a simple step of doing something different, stepping out of your box and doing something different. In your case, it was learning Spanish. You were doing something different. So there's elements of holding that process in place so that you will achieve your breakthroughs.
So what I should have done when I was there is probably just found places to use it on a regular basis or found somebody to talk to every other day that would hold me accountable to speaking in Spanish.
Perfect. And that, what you just shared, is a solution or a couple solutions. And that's what breakthrough thinking is also about, is not just holding on to one solution, because that one solution may not be the right solution.
Right.
So you got to brainstorm, you got to identify, you got to bounce ideas off of people. There's a whole lot there in creating intentional breakthroughs that will hold and last significantly to your life.
Okay, before we go to any more questions, you've written a couple little books about this kind of thing. And do you have a website that people can go to get information on the books, or to email you to get information on the books? And
I would suggest that they just email me. It's Meeting Master, just as it sounds, Meeting Master for you, the number 4 and the letter U at yahoo.com. Meeting Master for you at yahoo.com.
okay, now you also do I do know you do a lot of free bono work for
I do a lot
like
of
chambers
free
and stuff
Sure.
like that.
Yeah.
Now, why did you, other than your customer service and stuff, why did you decide to do the community service kind of thing?
Oh, because I love it. You can tell in talking with me that I have a passion to share this with the world out there, whatever group you are. And my passion is to help others think about their thinking, think about their words that they choose to use, think about their active listening. We are very lazy listeners, and it's because basically you think about listening. I'm speaking to you, right? It's really sound vibrations hitting your eardrum, and then you process what I say according to what you already know and what you think I'm saying. So listening, not really a whole lot of people are active listeners. We may say we are, but quite honestly, we're pre-programmed into already hearing what you're going to tell me or what you're saying to me.
Well, the saying that always comes to mind is, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. You should be listening twice as much as you speak. But another thing that I heard years ago was the opposite of speak is not listen. The opposite of speak is wait. Because when somebody's speaking to you, you've already decided what you're going to respond to no matter what they say, so you're just waiting for a chance to talk.
Exactly, waiting to speak.
Waiting to speak.
That's what a lot of us do, yes. And I think we all do that to some degree. Some people are better than others.
So you work harder, or we should all try harder to listen till somebody is done speaking and process all of what they say, as opposed to the thoughts that go into my head as soon as you start talking about something.
Right on. And with that, not only just listening, but connecting. And that's a big thing in breakthrough thinking, trying to understand the other person's point of view, their perspective, their personal reality. If you understand that, the more apt you are in coming together and developing a consensus. And consensus means kind of a win-win situation. You have to give up a little to get something. And consensus is a powerful tool if you use it properly.
You know, I was listening to 2 politicians talk yesterday, and opposite sides of the spectrum. And they were talking about a book they wrote. And
together.
a Democrat and Republican, they wrote it together.
Nice.
And they said you have to start with things you have in common, and if you have things in common and can embrace those things you have in common, the rest of it is just discussing how you feel about that things you have in common.
Right on.
And the person talking to him says, well, what do you guys have in common? Well, we both played basketball 25 years ago. So that's what they started with. They both enjoyed basketball 25 years ago.
Yes.
They're total opposite ends of the spectrum now, but they were able to put that together in a book.
Nice.
And were able to talk to those people, complimenting each other because they both played basketball 25 years ago. And that to me is breakthrough thinking right in itself.
Yeah, yeah. It's also relationship building. And,
Oh, very good.
You know, relationship building is very important in conversations and just day-to-day interaction we have with others. And if I've got a good relationship with you, more apt to have a successful problem-solving effort.
And in order to have that good relationship, we always got to find things we do have in common.
Exactly.
You're not going to want to sit down and anybody have coffee with somebody that you're going to be adversarial with every time you talk about. Well, you can start with the fact you both like coffee.
True.
And
Or even if I don't, I'll sit down and talk with you, and we'll find some common ground. We're all both human beings. We're both, to some degree, humility plays into this as well.
Yeah, you're right. I can see how it would quite a
If you
bit.
go in ego-centered and self-centered and already listening, you won't get far.
Right.
But if you can set the ego at the door and really talk with one another, share with one another, communicate and converse with one another, the breakthroughs are at your fingertips.
Thank you very much for being with us today, Greg.
My pleasure.
I've really enjoyed discussing that, and we could do a whole other segment about the same
good.
thing. Well, my name is Bob Taylor. I've been your host for this segment of Our Ventura TV. I've been here today with my guest, Gardner, and our discussion has been Breakthrough Thinking. Until next time, thank you all very much.